The movie begins with a group of doctors and nurses watching a surgery being done. One of the nurses, Miranda, goes to speak to her colleague, Nancy, about how she loved the surgery and how she plans to transfer to the surgical nursery unit. Miranda notices that one of her patients has died, so she goes to comfort the son, who had stayed by her side for months. Unexpectedly, the son says he actually wishes she had suffered for longer and had heard him tell her how stupid, fat, and lazy she is. It seems he's holding a lot of contempt for some past hurt. Before Miranda leaves, Nancy tells her she heard she's having a blind date soon, so Miranda tells her she'll tell her about it later. Miranda goes to a laundry shop to pick up her clothes, as she's about to sign for pickup. She doesn't sign because she doesn't like the type of pen they have there. When she realizes she has to sign, she reluctantly uses one of the pens. Later, she goes to see her father, Mitchell. While she's going through his garage, Mitchell's dog, Benny, jumps on Miranda's back and tears a part of her dress. Mitchell soon shows up and calls Benny back. When it's evening, Miranda and Mitchell go for a drink. He speaks to her about the new house she's getting and reminds her to check the heating system, among a few other things. He also apologizes for Benny's behavior and tells her she can get him to befriend him. While in the bathroom, Miranda is informed that one of the customers is choking. She rushes out but bumps into one of the restaurant workers. She reaches the choking man and pierces his throat with a steak knife before she puts in a straw to allow him to breathe. The next day, Miranda goes to check out the new house. She goes back home to prepare a cake for Nancy's birthday. While eating, one of the girls who had set up her blind date with a guy named Kevin asks her about her big date night. She reminds her not to cancel because it took her so long to get her to agree. Miranda laughs and promises not to cancel. The next day, while Miranda is polishing her nails, she finds a stranger by the door and figures it must be Kevin. She tells him he's there early, so he apologizes and helps her with her new pen package delivery. She offers him some freshly squeezed lemonade, so they both joke about her little lemonade stand. Soon after, Miranda goes inside to wear something. After a short discussion, she asks him if he can come back since he came early. He asks her what time he was supposed to be there and she's shocked that he doesn't remember. He walks towards the door and locks it. Miranda threatens to call the police, but he tells her he's always wanted her and tries to have his way with her. A struggle ensues, which causes some scratching and biting here and there. He eventually overpowers her, pins her to a table, and has his way with her. After he's done, the guy escapes and runs away from the house. Soon after, the real Kevin comes into the house and finds Miranda sprawled on the table. That night, the police come to pick Miranda up, and they interrogate Kevin, who had found her. While she's in the hospital, Miranda has a lot of bruises on her body while the doctors tend to her. Some officers come to ask her if she's seen the man who took advantage of her before, and she suddenly remembers that it's the same guy who she bumped into at the restaurant. At the restaurant, her assaulter comes to see his boss to get some money, and he appears to be leaving town. He soon meets his boss, who appears with several police officers. Meanwhile, Mitchell stays by Miranda's side at the hospital. He soon goes outside to speak to some officers, who notify him they've apprehended the culprit. Later, the culprit, named William, is seen at the police station. Days later, Mitchell goes to Miranda's home and cleans up the entire mess with tears in his eyes. Miranda soon returns home, and Mitchell leaves Benny with her to keep her safe. Later, her realtor informs her that no one is willing to buy her house anymore due to the incident. Miranda is frustrated, so her realtor suggests she plant some rose bushes. Miranda goes home, and Mitchell finds her angrily planting rose bushes. When he comes in, he tells her he wants to know if she'd like to grab a bite. She tells him he could have called, but Miranda seems to have disconnected her landline. She tells him they can go out tomorrow. That evening, Miranda goes to work her night shift. At the end of her shift, Nancy comes to call her for an emergency. The emergency turns out to be a surprise gift, which contains a surgical kit from the nurses in the critical care unit, who tell her they will miss her after her transfer. Miranda opens the kit, but doesn't look excited. She goes home to make a cake, but realizes her hands are no longer stable enough to decorate the cake. The next day, one of the doctors in the surgical unit tells her she can no longer make the transfer to the surgical unit because she missed her orientation and seems distracted. Miranda goes back to the laundry shop to get her clothes. As she leaves with the clothes, the rude clerk tells her she needs to pay, and Miranda tries to get a receipt of her payment. The clerk hurries her up, and Miranda becomes angry, telling her to wear a bra and stuff her fat back in her skirt. The clerk asks her to leave, so Miranda angrily leaves. At night, Miranda tries to practice on the surgical kit, but keeps making mistakes because her hands are shaking. She eventually breaks the kit out of anger. Miranda uses the surgical kit manual to write something and sleeps off. When she wakes up, she composes her words into a letter. The next day, she sends the letter to William at the prison. Some time later, after she gets back from work, she realizes the letter was written to the sender. So, she rewrites it and puts it back in the mail. When she walks towards her house, she realizes she doesn't like the design. Later, some men whom she hires appear to repaint and remodel the house. She walks to the porch and finds Mitchell trying to set up the old swinging chair she and her mother used to use. Miranda protests that she wasn't so close to her mother and says that the point of remodeling the house is to make the house look new. Mitchell eventually agrees and promises to take it down, but he mistakenly makes a dent in the porch roof. While they talk, Miranda runs to grab a letter from the mailman and realizes her letter to William has been written again. At work, Miranda receives a call from Mitchell, so she goes to check on him. She finds him with Benny, and he complains that Benny isn't feeling well. Miranda lures Benny with some food and takes him away. That night, Miranda finds a reply from William with the words "you win" on the envelope. The next day, Miranda goes to the prison and sits down to have a talk with William. She asks him why he finally agreed to see her, and he tells her it's an impulse. He expects her to vent out her anger, but she tells him she didn't come for that and is even unsure of why she came. He apologizes for what he did, and she tells him it's okay. She suddenly makes a joke and asks him about the food in there, which makes him laugh. Miranda heads to Mitchell's home to check on Benny. Mitchell soon arrives from his hardware store and is surprised to see her caring for the dog. Later, Miranda returns to see William after getting a letter from him. He thanks her for coming back and says he wanted to see her. He talks about how surprised he is that she could read the letter because he didn't do well in school, so she asks him how his classes in prison are going. Eventually, she brings up a conversation about the things he likes to do, and he tells her he used to break things when he was young, and his father used to beat him up to fix them. So he later developed a love for fixing things. Some time later, Mitchell calls Miranda while she's in therapy and asks her to help him check on Benny. Unknown to him, Miranda is already with Benny. He asks her to look at Benny to know if he's sick because he's getting worried, so Miranda tells him Benny looks fine. Mitchell laughs and asks her to keep treating him then. Miranda goes back to the prison to see William. Suddenly, a guard appears to inform her that William isn't going to be able to see her today, so she leaves and goes home. In his cell, William's cellmate makes a joke about how good Miranda looks. William gets angry and tells him to stop talking about her. Eventually, Miranda comes back to the prison to check on William. She grills him for making her waste time by driving here back and forth just to see him. He apologizes and tells her some men picked on him because they knew he wouldn't fight back so he wouldn't delay his parole, which left him in the sickbay. Miranda gets interested and asks to see what they did to him, so he reveals a large cut on his stomach. Miranda stares at the cut and traces the lines from the glass window in front of her. On Christmas, Miranda goes to Mitchell's house to decorate and prepare some food. Mitchell complains about how Benny sleeps so much and suggests he take him to the vet. Miranda says Benny's not a puppy anymore and he's getting old. In prison, William's roommate sniffs the Christmas card that Miranda sent to him. William grabs him from behind and smacks his head on the counter. William tells him never to touch any of his things again. Later that day, Miranda comes to see William. He thanks her for the card, so she tells him her mom used to make little holiday cards too. Miranda talks about how her mom died during her asthma attack when she was 9 because she couldn't get her medication quickly enough and she found her dead. William apologizes, but Miranda tells him it was a long time ago. He asks about his own mother, so he tells her his mother left him when he was 12. After the holidays, Miranda comes to see William again. She notices he's nervous, so he tells her he's getting paroled soon. He asks her if she's nervous about that because he feels she may not want to visit him out there if she feels he's a threat. He tells her he'd understand if he didn't want to see him out there, but he would never do what he did again. He tells her he wants to start fixing things if she lets him. When Miranda steps out, she receives a call from Mitchell saying that Benny is dead. She goes to his house to comfort him. He starts to break down due to the weight of having to bury Benny, his best friend, so she tells him to go get some food while she buries Benny. While they have lunch, he apologizes for not always being there for his family when she was growing up due to his work. Miranda tells him that life happens and they'll try their best to make the most of it. On the day of William's parole, William tells his roommate he's leaving and asks if he's going to miss him. His roommate doesn't seem to be comfortable having the conversation with him, so William tells him he won't forget him. A while later, Miranda receives some flowers at her workplace but lies to her coworkers that they came from her dad. William soon calls to ask if she likes the flower, so she tells him she doesn't think it's so appropriate to send flowers to her workplace. At his hotel place, William checks out some girls who are out and bathing but eventually locks the door. That night, he tries to beat the meat but realizes it doesn't excite him. The next day, William comes to visit Miranda because she had invited him over to help out with completing her home remodeling. He happily works outside and thanks her for the chance to visit her. When he finishes, he asks her if she'd let him come back to fix the hole that Mitchell made in her porch roof, so she tells him she'd love that. Mitchell goes to the hardware store to talk to the new owner when William suddenly walks in to get some paint to match the piece of wood from Miranda's roof. Mitchell avoids him but closely watches him from afar. After he leaves, Mitchell grabs the piece of wood that William brought and angrily leaves. Mitchell goes to Miranda's house to confront her about meeting with William. She denies it, but eventually says the truth when he shows her the piece of wood. She tells him she's trying to find a way to move on from what happened and doesn't want to spend years crying in therapy. Mitchell tells her there are other ways to move on, but she tells him this is what she needs. Mitchell tells her he doesn't know her and leaves. In the bathtub, Miranda receives a call from William. He tells her he came around like he promised, but he couldn't approach because he saw Mitchell. He suggests that it may be a good idea if he stays away for a while, but Miranda insists that Mitchell is just being dramatic and that he won't be back for a while. Eventually, William shows up and gets right to work. Miranda welcomes him and gives him a lemonade drink. He later joins her to paint the rocking chair, and they both get intimately close. He soon complains that his stomach doesn't feel so good and asks if he can use her bathroom or get a place to lie down. Miranda hesitates but eventually decides to let him in. Some time later, William wakes up on a bed in Miranda's basement. She tells him he passed out, so she puts a towel on his head. He thanks her for taking care of him and asks her if she knows what's wrong with him. She tells him what's wrong with him is that he's a woman assaulter. Surprised, William tries to get up and realizes he's strapped to the bed. She tells him she hopes he doesn't think she forgot that he forced himself on her. William asks if she made him sick, but she tells him she put some antifreeze in his drink, just like she gave Benny, which eventually killed him. William tries to reason with her by telling her she saves lives because he saw her save a choking man at the restaurant. She tells him that, on the contrary, she got to stick a knife in a man's throat in broad daylight, and people applauded her. She soon injects him with some substance to make him pass out. When he wakes up, William tries to scream for help. Miranda covers his mouth and goes to check on her new delivery of new pens while holding a sledgehammer. She comes back downstairs and touches his hand. She screams that he's hurting her but starts to laugh as she brings out his amputated hand. William starts to cry when he realizes that she's cut off both his hands. She hands him a mirror to see his expression. William tells her he knows she's not a killer, so she informs him that she let her mother die by not giving her the medication she needed because of the things she did. She soon removes the covers and tells him to see what she has done to him. William looks at his body and starts to scream for help. She had done so much damage to him, but he couldn't feel it because of a numbing injection. Later, Miranda goes to apologize to Mitchell. He tells her not to apologize, even though he doesn't understand why she's doing what she's doing. He tells her for the first time that he's really scared, so she tells him she put an end to it and William won't be coming around anymore. What a twisted ending. I loved it and William totally deserved it. He messed with the wrong girl. What did you guys think? Let us know in the comments.